Good afternoon. I'm Marcus Pask coming to you from Spain, and welcome to Talent Unplugged Across the Pond, the show where we dive into the honest, often messy truth about hiring.
Good morning. I'm Megan Conlon from Houston, Texas, and this is the show coming to you from two continents, two perspectives, one unfiltered conversation about how we look at the recruiting industry. Buddy, we've got quite the guest. She's quite a get, and she's quite the guest on today. Before I even say her name, she is a former colleague of ours, now someone that we can call a friend. We've worked with her significantly previously, and now she has gone and done some remarkable work at a different company that we're going to dive into, but cannot wait to pick her brain about all of the things. But we'd like to welcome Hallie Byers to the podcast today. She has had a career spanning campus recruitment, full cycle hiring, leadership, now head of leadership across both fast growing tech companies and now global consumer brands, one that is particularly exciting and interesting. And she is currently the head of talent acquisition for the Americas at On, the running and sportswear brand that is all the rage right now. She's leading a team across corporate and retail store hiring in North America and in LATAM. But before that, she spent 5 years with Marcus and I at Miro, and where she placed nearly 300 people, I think probably more than that, but nearly 300 people while she built foundational and instrumental processes, playbooks, rituals, like foundational team culture. Like she was all of the things. And we are so grateful that you're here to chat with us today, Hals. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, you know how flustered I get with public praise, so I can't decide if I want to do that everywhere I go or if I never want to hear that again.
I don't ever want to hear it again.
Well,
But thanks.
Very welcome. Very welcome. I'm very excited. So thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so excited. And this for our listeners, this will hopefully be more than just a catch up and just a casual chat. We'll actually get into some content that will be helpful to our listener. But oh, Hals, we're so excited you're here. I know that I would love to start back at the beginning. We have had a lot of talent acquisition leaders, senior recruiters, folks that have maybe transitioned out of TA. And the one common thread is that no one gets into recruiting on purpose. It's always sort of been by accident. Are you going to break the mold? Talk to us about how you got into recruiting.
Well, I think only somewhat. Only somewhat. So I I started my career as a financial representative for Northwestern Mutual. So very salesy, very agency, but I think laid a lot of really foundational groundwork for some of the things that I love about TA. But even before that, I was actually pre-med, which is
Oh, wow.
I'd forgotten that.
I know. Me too sometimes. So just the funniest right-hand turn. I think the through line for me throughout every role that I've had, and as I think about where I want to go next, is just a love of learning and a passion for people. And so I did also fall into recruiting. I have to say, I am in that bucket. But I fell into recruiting by way of building campus programming. So started out building Northwestern Mutual's campus programming for West LA. Loved it. Loved the structure. Loved the application of some of the agency skills I had learned as a rep. And from there, was really curious to get into tech. It was 2017, 2018 in Santa Monica, and there were a bunch of really cool young startups that were coming to, what did they call it, Megs? Silicon Beach or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And found my way to Clutter, where I really began to work on G&A and business recruiting as well as tech recruiting. It was an on-demand logistics startup, and unfortunately, that timing hit right with COVID. So logistics, people coming into your home, moving your things, not necessarily a hot commodity. in
Yeah.
a time of quarantine. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they did go through a riff on the TA side, but that's where I found my way to Miro and to both of you. And that's like really where TA took off for me. But I think, again, like when I think about my why and I think about what I love about TA, I think like it kind of comes down to three things. The first is the love of learning. I think the best people in TA, some of the best people in HR really love to learn and understand, whether it's the person they're working with or the business they're supporting. I think the second piece is problem solving, like unsticking things that are sticky and helping to put puzzle pieces together is something I really enjoy, especially when it comes to people and their experience and their impact. And then just the passion for people. Like people are the heartbeat of an organization, right? And so to build a really good one, you have to find really great people and make sure you're matchmaking appropriately. And the science and the strategy behind that is really exciting. So probably more than you wanted, but that's the journey. And I hesitate to say, but I think I don't break the mold, but I definitely love it. And I think that's one of the things I've like carried with me throughout.
Love that.
How big was Miro when you joined? And what part were you looking after to give people an idea that as me and Megan who know your
Yeah.
background?
Yeah. Well, Meg and I were at a small but mighty recruiting team of, was it two? Was it three? Something like
Three.
that?
Three, I think. Yeah.
Three of us jumping in. And I think we were 200 globally. The LA office was like 20 when I started. I was initially brought on to lead kind of everything. I think at one point I was actually owning a VP of renewals in Munich, I want to
Wow.
say. And then in parallel to that, also hiring for all of our scaled or enterprise customer success team members in the US from LA. Truly global experience. But yeah, I mean, a little bit of everything started out truly like G&A.
Mhm.
The wonderful Meg stepped in and started to lead and build and scale the sales side of the house. And then in parallel, I stepped into to lead and build and scale the CX side of the house.
Mhm.
So specifically focusing on customer success across all segments and then leaders as well, along with some leadership hiring, kind of a grab bag, honestly, like really a Swiss Army knife Renaissance person experience
Mhm.
until I stepped into leadership. And that's when I started to specialize in CX. And then from there, started to specialize more broadly across just business recruiting, whether it was G&A or go to market. And then actually, we had some one off technical roles as
Yeah.
well. So, yeah.
And
And
looking in, oh, go ahead,
you go.
Marcus.
You go. You go.
Say, looking back, making that transition from a very senior individual contributor, you had a lot of input in a lot of the foundational things
Mm.
that we ended up building at Miro. But then, obviously, as a leader, you have even more influence and ownership. I'm curious to know what was the most challenging thing about moving from
Mm.
a senior recruiter to a first line leader?
My gosh, I'll tell you what I was most nervous about, and then I'll
Hmm.
tell you what was most challenging. And I don't think either of things will be a surprise to you, Meg, because you were very close to this. But very nervous about leading my peers. These were folks that I had been side by side with in really intense hyper growth
Yeah.
stage. And, we're closing 14 to 16 roles across different functions, different levels on a quarterly basis. And so I knew from a performance perspective, I had done really great work and that boosted my confidence. But I think there's always a level of anxiety around, hey, this person used to be a partner to me. And now I'm responsible and accountable for their growth and development. And I want to make sure that they are engaged and successful in their work.
Hmm.
Uh, and I feel so grateful to have Meg in my corner throughout that journey because I could not have been successful in that role without your coaching and guidance. And ended up being one of the things that I loved the most. It was the most fun part. I was like, now I get to actually have some agency and ownership over advocating for people that I really care about. And that was super cool. So I was very nervous about that. And that ended up being a red herring. Thank goodness. I think what was most challenging was this is so tactical, but like kind of the transition of prioritization and
Yeah.
thinking through,
Mm.
okay, hey, here's how I prioritize my time when I was leading a team of two or three. And here's how I need to start thinking about my time as this team grows to, 4, 5, 6 plus.
Mhm.
And really spending your time where you're most impactful, not just for your team, but for the business. And recognizing there are some things that maybe from a personal perspective that you really want to take on or tackle, like have to take a back seat because you have to put the team first and that like stack rank that it's been a really great mental exercise, actually, especially as I've stepped into a new industry and led larger and larger teams. But I think that the prioritization and thoughtfulness around the work was the biggest challenge as I moved from just IC and some team lead work to truly being the owner of a function.
Right. Yeah. Because your scope continued to expand from a leadership perspective. You were owning not a small org by any stretch of the imagination, but customer experience was just one piece of the pie in North America. And then eventually, as the team kept restructuring, you owned the whole kit and caboodle in North America and all of the recruiters that were part of supporting that team. I would be curious to hear from your perspective, what are some trainings or skills that maybe we didn't have at Miro that would have served you really well, or maybe now that you have them serve you really well now at On? You mentioned the prioritization, coaching and development. Could it be headcount planning? Could it be executive leadership? I would be curious what you don't feel like you had a strong foundation in that you do now at
Meg,
On.
are you asking for feedback?
We'll get onto that
indirect
later.
way.
Don't
Yes,
worry.
yes, I am having a performance review 2 years late.
I do feel a little bit like I'm like having a 1v1 in the most delightful way. I was thinking about this morning. I was like, "Ooh, I get to catch up with Meg and Marcus today."
Yeah. Like,
Um,
what do you think, like, as a leadership collective, because Marcus and I were obviously leaders at Miro too.
Yeah.
What do you think that we didn't have that we sort of had to learn on the job?
Well, I have a thought, but Marcus, what do you think?
For me, headcount planning, we've touched on this a few times. Like headcount planning was just like you don't get taught how to do headcount planning. I mean, you learn how to do prioritization, as you mentioned earlier, how like through your own work, you then have an idea of how to do it for your team. But pure headcount planning of what does the next year look like, and then working backwards, and then trying to get the buy-in of your stakeholders for them to trust and believe what you're telling them as the narrative of the story as to why you need to prioritize certain headcount or why you need to hold on, this supposed P1 role. I think whole headcount planning was a thing that none of us ever get taught, and we're just told, here's your team, here's your roles for the rest of the year, go and figure it out. And then you have to go and build a case as to why you might need an extra recruiter or a contractor or agency. And it's like, I don't know, I'm guessing. Like, you tell me. Yeah. So just throw it up there and wait for someone to tell you if it's right or not. I've got no idea. So that was my part, headcount planning.
So good. That's so good. Here's the thing. I don't know that I've ever talked to a recruiter or a TA leader in any industry that has been able to genuinely say that their function crushes headcount planning.
No.
It is universally something that I think is a bit of a work in progress, we'll say.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say +1 to the headcount planning. I think also radical candor would have been
Yeah.
powerful. And not just as a leader, and Meg, you were so good at championing this for us in the Americas and across business recruiting. But yeah, I think just the ability to share and enablement and training, not just for me, but for the team as well, on, hey, here's how you share direct feedback and here's how you influence your peers cross talent. Because I think one of the challenges you see in talent functions as they grow are some of the intra relationships and the building of races and the building of swim lanes. And that's we see that on as well, right? It's not just a Miro challenge. It's something we're working through cross function, cross region. But I think, yeah, radical candor and maybe some training and enablement around like how to partner intra talent as the work scales and grows and gets harder and the swim lanes become more clear.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting topic to bring up, and something I'd love Marcus's perspective on, given that this is meant to be a global, spicy podcast. Radical candor tends to be a very North American-based concept. We're sort of obsessed with it. It can be buzzwordy. It's definitely a philosophy that a lot of leaders anchor on in the United States. I know we started introducing it in some capacity globally at Miro, but talk to me, Marcus, about, was radical candor something that EMEA the folks in EMEA sort of balked at? Was it meaningful or impactful in any way to use that philosophy?
Couldn't think of anything worse than doing.
That's the
But
spicy take I wanted.
yeah. Here's the thing. I think, like, on a personal note, I couldn't think of anything worse. I know a lot of my colleagues and people in my team like also felt that way. However, going into a leadership role and understanding and seeing the benefits that were done through North America and through what some of the training I did in previous companies on radical candor, I did see the benefit of it purely because I had such a multicultural, diverse team. I think at one point I was managing 20 people and they're from 15 different locations in Europe. And that actually gave me some ways of working and philosophies to keep it consistent, which I think then everyone was able to understand. Did I enjoy it? No. Do I want to ever do that again? No. But I do see the benefit of it in the ways of doing things. And yeah, that's, I'm sure you weren't expecting any other answer from me other than
I wasn't. That's
absolutely
why
not.
I went fishing. That is why I went fishing, Marcus.
And I think on a point you mentioned, House, like, and the reason that me and Megan do this podcast is because we get on so well as peers when we're at Miro and stuff. And it really was down, you touched on a point there. When you move into these leader roles or manager roles and you really need to, work with your peers at this next new level and truly understand what their challenges are and how their team is distributed and where you can go into a meeting as a joint force to help push a narrative or push a discussion or get things changed. And I think without me having Megan, I don't think that would have been possible with some of the things that we were trying to do. And just having someone that is your buddy in that room when things are getting really difficult. And I think for any person moving from IC to lead or manager or further up is like, find someone in the team as a peer that is going to be able to have your back, that you can help support you through the processes, because it can be a very lonely place otherwise, and something that you can't move the needle with unless you have someone helping to fight your corner as well. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Truly.
Yeah.
Let's move to On. I am
Yes.
so curious about all of the wonderful things that you're doing, building, contributing to it On. So tell our listeners, if you wouldn't mind, what is Head of Talent Acquisition of the Americas at On? What does that mean?
When you say it sounds so fancy.
It is.
So my role at On is to lead 2 TA functions for North and South America. So we have a corporate team that hires for a lot of the roles very similar to what we would hire for at Miro, right? So think of them as business recruiters, but like an IT lens. We have a couple of technical roles that sit in New York that we do hire for from our Portland team. But we have 4, soon to be 5 recruiters on the corporate side who cover those functions. And then we have recruiting team that leads hiring for all of our stores and our retail fleet. And all of that hiring spans Canada, North America, Central America, and South America. So that's the nuts and bolts, the what. When I think about the how and like how this recruiting team is evolving and growing and changing, one of the things that has been really exciting since I've started it on is this shift towards a very proactive, strategic TA mindset across both of these scopes of work. And it looks different in each bucket. And that's one of the things I've loved learning about, right? Like when you think about strategic recruiting in retail and going to market and like pounding the pavement, like in a mall, in a shopping center, actually seeing where our competitors sit, recruiting in person, which has felt so fun. We have an amazing recruiter on our team, Najia, who's like, she could recruit someone at an airport. Like she's unstoppable. And so when I think about like the way that world works, it's so interesting and so complex and like very different than what we do on the corporate side. On the corporate side, the strategic shift is really in 2, we're pulling 2 levers to make it happen. The first is capacity. So part of my growth into this head of role has been an expansion of the team. So before where it was just, hey, corporate and retail recruiters, we now have a more fully baked corporate team. So rec load is lower. Folks have space to source. This has taken a lot of time because it just takes time to find the right people and bring them in and be thoughtful around like, hey, is it contract? Is it full time? Where do they sit? What do they own? Are we solving for the right functions and at the right level? So as of next month, as of July 1st, we'll have a fully fledged corporate team, which will be great. And we've also brought coordination into TA. Like such an unlock. We have an amazing coordinator, Lindsay, who's been on the team for 5 years now.
Wow.
And had a very similar hyper growth journey to Miro. So she's she's so funny. She was like, yeah, I think at On I've had like 6 or 7, maybe 8 managers in my 5 years here. I know. And so, it's not by way of anything other than the business changing very, very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like On grew from nothing to a almost 5,000 person company across retail and corporate in 15 years across region, country, function, vertical. Like vertical is something we should talk about because it's really interesting to think about how we build tennis versus kids versus
Oh,
lifestyle.
yeah.
It's cool. So anywho, so we brought CX in-house. This is great. But when I think about sort of the how and where we're headed as a TA function, a lot of what we're talking about are building some of the things that we did really well at Miro, which is strong foundation and getting all of our processes in order and our swim lanes really clear so that recruiters can go do the most exciting work, which is the talking to candidates, the positioning, the little things, the small touch, like that kind of highly strategic and craft first recruiting work.
Yeah.
So that might have been a bit long-winded, but it's been kind of a doozy of a year. So a lot of change. So I hope that gives a little bit of context and color to what it looks like.
Yeah,
love-
totally.
I love seeing Megan looking like a happy parent right now. It's amazing.
She's glowing. She's like,
So proud of her.
look at her go.
Oh my goodness. Called out. But it's so true. I love hearing about all of the really complex, cool problems you're solving. So you mentioned vertical. How different has it been owning not only like the Americas versus just North America and owning retail and corporate? How does your leadership philosophy, probably not, but does your leadership philosophy change? Does your thought around capacity planning change? What does that look like?
I would say leadership philosophy, no.
Mhm.
It's a good question. I think capacity, yes. Retail hiring is like, it's so different. And retail is even newer and On. So we're just now getting to a place where we're building a lot of structure and process. So when we think about capacity planning, corporate is, I'd say, relatively speaking, more straightforward to solve for because the roles are all aligned by grade. It's pretty clear, like, hey, how much should a tech versus a corp versus an early careers recruiter own? When we look at retail, there are a couple of different bodies of work that retail recruiters owns. They own new store openings, which is everything that has to do with the store day one. So store leader, associate store leaders, lead store advisors, and then the store advisor hourly team. And it's built on a timeline, right? So you have to work backward from that and then kick off. And it's almost like project managing a recruiting project. And then in parallel, they own steady state hiring. So they're also owning like, hey, in Woodbury, we have a backfill for X, Y, and Z role. Let's go live. Let's get it running. So the capacity conversations are very different because the way that you would look at an NSO in terms of how much work it is versus a one-off backfill is kind of an apples to oranges. Whereas on the corporate side, it's all, don't want to say one-to-one because it's all very different flavors.
Yeah.
But relatively speaking, running a full cycle rec, you can calibrate more easily against different functions. So yeah, it's been an interesting kind of nut to crack. I wouldn't say that we've perfected it, but we're definitely getting closer. And bringing in more resourcing is going to help a lot. We're also ramping up on the retail side, which will help make this more straightforward.
So cool.
Super cool. I'm such a geek about it. I will say, to your question on leadership philosophy, one of my biggest learnings was like, you know me, I love to get like, I want to know all the things. I want to learn how it works, how it ticks. Tell me everything. And one of the things that I learned in I would say my first year in this leadership journey with On is like the importance of getting close to the work so you can understand it, speak to it, advocate for your team, and really know like, hey, how does this function operate so that I can then, advocate at an up and a lateral level to make things happen for this group, and then when to like step away. Right. So when to say like, oop, I'm in the way. I've been too close to this for too long. You need to run with it. And that's been a really great sort of learning and journey as well. And I'm excited that I feel now, I think I started to feel this way probably like 4 or 5 months in, like, hey, I can really like start to take a step back here because I know enough to be useful and be impactful. And now I can let I don't want to be in the way of my people running with it, making it happen.
Love it.
You also have South America, Central America, correct me if I'm wrong. And
Yeah.
do you have part of APAC as well?
No,
No,
APAC
just
is separate. Yep.
okay. And so for you, how was it getting to learn those parts of the
Yeah.
world as well? Like, are there things around like employment law that you need to learn? Is there things about
Yeah.
like how you pay people? Is it hourly? Is it like weekly? Like, what were your learnings going into two new markets as well?
Yeah, well, what's interesting about launching retail, because we're in the process of opening several stores in Brazil and Sao Paulo, is just the language nuance first and foremost,
Yeah.
right? Like I wish I could say that I was multilingual and had Portuguese in my back pocket, but I sure don't. And so getting resources in region who can not only like speak the language, but really bring the recruiting that we want to do in region. So
Yeah.
we're talking a lot about hiring for premium. Like, hey, how do we get closer to that premium profile, knowing that On is moving in that direction as a sportswear brand? It's not just hiring from a one-to-one competitor, but hiring from like, hey, like an LVMH or a Gucci or an Aesop. Like, how do we start to move into that territory? Way easier to do when you speak the language. So
Yeah.
resourcing in region was one of the first conversations we had. And then, yeah, Marcus, to your point, it's everything from employment law to hours worked to, hey, what's the pension program? And then making sure that the resources that are supporting it align. And that's one of the things that's been really great about On is just like the cross-functional partners we have in place are amazing. So not just, Miro, I feel like we were doing a lot of things TA for TA, just scrappy, making it work. And with On, we've got a really phenomenal talent operations team, and we have an amazing BP team that we partner with. So a lot of those folks are in place to get things stood up relatively quickly and with like the expertise to make sure we're doing it right the first time. So, Marcus, what's it like when you open in new like regions in EMEA or new countries? 'Cause I feel like it's more of I like to think it's
Yeah.
more of a one-to-one, but then I look at notice periods in a Germany versus a London, and it sure isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, yeah, you said Germany, 3-month notice period minimum.
Yeah.
France, you've got different employment laws where,
Yeah.
once you get over a certain number of employees, then you need to have a certain percentage of them to be French or local. Germany, France, you have works councils. So that's also something that once you get to a certain number of employees, you have to start working towards. Compensation is completely different. Spain and Portugal versus the UK can be half the
Yeah.
cost. And if you're relocating people, especially from the US, which we did quite a lot, trying to bring
Yeah.
people over from places where you have enterprise teams, and then they're
Yeah.
saying, yeah, I want to go and work in Spain. I'm like, okay, well, you're earning 1,000 in the US, you're going to take off at least 100 of that by moving to Spain. So how does that look? And I think it's different per country, but I think when you're in a company like Miro or Nebius I'm at now and other ones, I think you're able to still hire a lot of recruiters, not necessarily in country. You don't need to have a recruiter in France or in Germany. It helps for some of those, but you
Yeah.
can operate a little bit more differently where you don't need to speak the language and English can be the main part. Whereas I've seen also in the past of America, if you're going to expand into Japan, you need to have a local recruiter in Japan that speaks the language. Same for many other places. So I think Europe is slightly different. We're able to operate on a much more wider scale, I think, when we're trying to hire people, whereas in other parts you have to be a little bit more nuanced, for sure.
Yeah. Should we move on to our myth? Make
Let's
sure that we
go.
have enough time
Myth it
for
up.
it. All right. I'm
Myth it
very
up. I love that.
interested. Myth it up. I'm really interested in your perspective on this house. We've talked previously about skills-based hiring versus experience or pedigree-based hiring. I think we're at an impasse, especially with AI.
Yeah.
We're in this AI era, and finding that at least companies like maybe Miter, for example, we're scaling, but we're scaling conservatively.
Yeah.
We're not hiring to put a button seat. We're hiring because we absolutely know we're going to need this human being, and it's not going to be replaced by an AI bot in 6 months. So I say all of that to say our myth today is that you need direct industry experience to get hired by a cool brand like an On, for
I was
example.
gonna say.
So when your team is looking at, and maybe it's different
Yeah.
retail versus corporate, and I'd love to hear that nuance, but when your team is kicking off a new role with the hiring manager and they're looking for their ideal candidate profile, or I think, what was the term that you used internally for like a spot on candidate?
We're talking a lot about premium on the
Premium,
retail side. Yeah, yeah,
premium.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a premium
Premium.
candidate.
Yeah.
Do they have to have direct experience? And do you agree or disagree with that myth?
Well, I'm gonna split the myth right down the middle, and I'm gonna say yes and.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
I think it depends, right? Like, I think my career path is a unique example of this being a bust. Right? I had no experience in retail. I had so
Mhm.
much to learn when I got started. I'd be the first to say that I still have a ton to learn. But I think on the skill set side, what I did bring to the table as I moved into On was some pretty deep expertise in hypergrowth hiring and building structure and moving TA towards like a strategic TA first mindset function that celebrates TA as a craft and really does that well. So I think I honestly like a bit of stars aligning, kismet, me finding this role and the timing being so great. I think largely speaking, if you're hiring for someone who is going to lead a large function, right? So you're hiring for like an SVP of sales, you're going to need that person to have led a certain amount of people, a certain dollar amount in revenue, and they're going to need to have deep, experience and relationships in the industry to be successful. But if you're hiring for something like we talk about this a lot with the retail to corp hiring pipeline, if we're hiring for an account services role where we're looking for someone who has a specific skill set but maybe doesn't have the industry experience, what a great opportunity to move someone from retail into the corporate world if that's something that they're curious about. So
Yeah.
I think it's a yes and. I think from my perspective, and I would love to hear from each of you if you agree or disagree, is like the way to do it right is just to be really clear. Be clear with your hiring manager and like, what do you actually need to be successful in this role? What are the competencies required? And then let's do a skill matching exercise based on, hey, what do we see in the market and what are you seeing as an ideal candidate profile? Um, so you know what? I'm gonna say largely bust with
Mhm.
a sprinkle of myth. What do you think?
I love it. Love it. I would agree with you. I think it depends on the level. I think it depends on the level. I think it depends on the role. If it's an entry level role like a BDR, SDR, certainly do not have to have any sales experience in order to learn how
Yeah.
to sell in tech or even in retail. But a CEO should
Mm,
probably have
done a couple
significant
things. Yeah.
experience leading a company within the industry in
Yeah.
which they are being hired into, if they are not the co-founder of the company, of course.
Yeah.
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 Um, I do love how you mentioned the skills matching piece. So after Marcus answers, I want to dive in a little bit because I think that might be helpful to some of our TA listeners that are coming up with they
Mhm.
don't have X years of experience
Mhm.
at Nike. They
Yeah.
can't work it on.
Yeah.
Um, Marcus, what's your point of view on this myth?
Yeah, no, I agree with House. Like my own background, I was investment banking, then I was in travel, then
I
travel
forgot
to
about that. I
e-mobility scooters,
forgot.
then to Miro,
Yeah.
and now I'm at an AI infrastructure company. Like none of
Yeah.
them link together. There's not one transferable part of those industries that you would think, yeah, that's a match.
Yeah.
But if you have the experience, then I think you look for the potential, like you said, for you,
Mhm.
how is it was the same moving from Miro to On, hyper growth, learning how to manage diverse teams, what things go through. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think depending on the level, I think there are some myths busting that happens for sure. But otherwise, I think experience does help. Sometimes it doesn't. You wanted to tackle that, Mex? You wanted to ask
Yeah.
how's a question?
Yeah, I'm curious how when you talked about skills matching, how does that look in practice
Mm.
for a hiring manager kickoff or calibration?
Yeah. I want to give an answer, but I recognize it may not align to the way everyone's system is set up. I
Sure.
think like first and foremost, you need to know what your competencies are for the function. So really getting clear with your HRBP or whatever intra talent team partner you work with to get an understanding of like, hey, what are the core skills, competencies required across this function for someone to be successful or across this team? And then from there, when you talk to your hiring manager and they bring you that scope JD and it's, they're hiring for, call it like a mid-level role, it's obviously JD scoped at a VP level. You have to say, hey, hey, hiring manager. I love the ambition. One day this person will grow to be a fantastic VP, but let's get really clear on like the scope of work. And I think that that's the important talk track with hiring
Yeah.
managers is really helping them to understand like, hey, here's the scope of work that we're looking at. When we think about the skills that this person needs to be successful, let's look at the competency rubric or competency resource that your team has, and let's align the two. And then let's actually start looking at some profiles because before we even go to market and decide who's this person going to be, we actually need to really understand like what does this look intra company, and then let's bring it to market. So I think the closer the calibration is, the more deeply it's aligned to competencies, the easier it is to coach your hiring manager on some of those profile misalignments that happen early. And the hiring manager always is going to want someone who's quote unquote done it before. Or I don't often see a hiring manager come to a recruiter and say, I'm hiring for aptitude or I'm hiring
Mm.
for something that looks
For
different.
slope, we say that a
Exactly.
lot at Miter,
Slope.
hiring for
Yep.
slope
Yep.
versus intercept.
Exactly.
There are just a handful of roles where that is a-okay, like, they just don't have to be, like, completely transferable, so that's very interesting. Marcus, did you have a question?
I have a question for House. Yeah, but this is it's a little bit off topic.
Okay.
What would be your advice to candidates right now in the market? So many applications that are happening. It is very, very difficult for candidates right now. What advice would you give to them that are applying for general, doesn't necessarily have to be it for on, that you're seeing as common mistakes or things that are coming up more frequently?
I know it's such a hard market right now. It's really
Yeah.
hard. Inbound applications have never been higher. It's just tricky to find something that feels right. I think the first and this is I think the first thing I would say is like pay attention to the details. Like with your resume, make sure you're really if you're excited about the role, make sure you take 5-10 minutes and really align some of the keywords because most companies are using an AI tool to go through
Mhm.
inbound, right? If you're receiving hundreds of applications over just a few days, like recruiters need the help. And you can bring yourself to the top more quickly if you're doing that word match alignment. I think the other thing that I would say is like don't be afraid to reach out to the recruiters on LinkedIn and just be thoughtful in what you share, right?
Yeah.
Recruiters,
Mhm.
because it's a busy market, recruiters are often the busiest they've ever been, and they've got a lot on their plate. So I wouldn't ask for an intro call, but never hurts to send a note that says like, "Hey, here's where I see myself aligning. Here's why." And like, if you're open to it, I'd love a chat, but I understand that you get a lot of these notes, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a good space to play in and network. Network, network, network. Ask for intro chats with people that look interesting to you, use your mentors, use your resources. Like most roles that I'm seeing actually work out are roles that move through that kind of referral engine versus an inbound engine.
Yeah.
I just like, oh, this might sound harsh. Don't take it personally, right? There are a lot of people out there looking. There are a lot of folks who are in the market looking around, and so the right thing will come. But it's just about timing and
Yeah.
finding the thing that's best for you. So that's what I would say.
We hear networking every time we
Every
talk
time.
about
Yeah.
advice in the market from I think every single guest that we have
Yeah.
Yeah.
asked has said networking, networking, networking. That is how you will cut through the noise. That's how you'll be remembered when the role maybe isn't posted yet and
Yes.
someone wants
Yep.
an introduction from someone else already knows. Um, that advice rings true. And would you suggest that folks even start doing networking before they're looking for a job? Like that should be a muscle that they're flexing and building even when they're at On or at Nebius and that maybe they're not yet looking to leave. It could still be um, a very fruitful interaction and relationship to build because you get some external feedback, thoughts, brainstorming from someone that's not maybe in the
Yeah.
echo chamber or in the bubble. So networking is
Yeah.
really important right now.
Totally. And honestly, when you think about skill matching, right? Like no one can help you zoom out better than a mentor, right?
Mhm.
Someone who's seen you in work, been successful and can kind of call out like, "Hey, here are some of the things I think you're doing really well and here are some places you could position that when you think about new roles or roles that you might not have thought about." So, yeah, totally agree. And the people that know you best can put you up for the roles that are the best fit.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's not just like, hey, this role aligns to me on paper. It's about the culture. It's about the
Mhm.
relationships internally and where, where the company's headed. That's often more important than just, hey, I want to be a marketing specialist, and I've been a marketing specialist, so this is where I should go next.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think, when you're doing these outreaches and networking,
Yeah.
because it's not the easiest thing to do, but as we've
Mm.
all discussed, it's going to be the most fruitful success, I think, for any applications.
Yeah. Yep. Or do career coaching.
Yeah.
Career. I
We do
happen to
like
know happen to know someone that does career coaching as well. Oh my gosh. Shall we end there for today?
Sounds
Let's
good.
do it.
Awesome. Well, that's it for this episode of Talent Unplugged Across the Pond. Hallie, thank you so much for joining us today. What a great conversation. We learned so much, and I know our listeners will too. We hope you enjoyed listening, and we look forward to more stories, more myth busting, and everything in between. That's a goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, team.